Hello, everybody. Welcome to another Comic Source Comic Boom collaboration. We're here to talk about the DC books for the week of August 16th, 2022. Just a reminder, we're going to dive deep. We're going to get into spoilers. And I want to remind everybody of that because, man, this week, there's some big revelations. There's some really cool moments. There's some stuff I can't wait to talk about with Rocky. We were just talking before we started recording, Batman One Bad Day. Something goes down at the end of Nightwing, which is super interesting. There's some stuff in the Harley Quinn in space storyline. So, yeah, this was a really, really solid week. Maybe not quite as good as things were a couple weeks ago. But, yeah, there's a lot of great stuff this week. I really enjoyed this week's books. What about you, Rock?
Yeah, there's if I'm narrowing it down, I got four big moments. I still think it's batting under 50% this week for me still, but I got four solid books that I really like. So I suspect you might enjoy more, maybe some of them more than I did, but the ones I enjoyed, I really enjoyed. So it was certainly better than last week. Was Well, but I'm looking forward to
Let me see
talking
if I
about it
can
with you.
guess. Yeah, let me see if I can guess the four. Batman One Bad Day, The Flash, Nightwing, um, Batman the Night. Is that your fourth one?
Uh, Actually, I don't mind I was gonna say world's finest. Actually, you can make it
Okay.
five. I didn't mind Batman tonight, so I'll probably go five.
Okay, fair enough.
You know.
Curious
Yeah,
to see, because this happens. Sometimes there's books I don't necessarily like or you don't necessarily like, and then we hear the
well,
way the other person
exactly.
kind of
I mean,
perceived them, and we go, "Oh yeah, I didn't think of it that way. That was pretty good." So
I'm getting
we'll
that a
see.
lot with you and Jim when I review the indie comics. The more we talk about it with what I talk about them with you, sometimes I like them a lot more at the end, and it's just one of
Yeah,
those things. But that's good. That's what
yeah,
comics are
curious.
about. They're meant to be shared and talked about, and let's have some fun.
Yeah, exactly, 100%. So we'll kick it off with the ending of the Aquaman and the Flash Voidsong storyline, Book 3, Elegy for Speed and Storm, written by Colin Kelly and Jackson Lansing. The art is by Vasco Gregev. I think that's how you pronounce it. Colors by Rain Barreto. Letters by Troy Petrie. Man, I love the art. I always have to start with the art for this book because both the kind of the line work, the style, the aesthetic that Vasco uses, it's very traditionally superheroic. The Rain Barreto colors are very bright, which I always talk about using really bright colors kind of helps to give it a little bit of that Silver Age or classic superhero kind of feel. We both have talked in the past, and I've talked with some listeners online about the relationship between Arthur Curry and Barry Allen here, and how that more than anything is what kind of sets this book outside of regular DC continuity. Their friendship is a little different, a little more of an arrogant Arthur Curry, a little more of an arrogant Mira, for that matter, and kind of an interesting dynamic for their friendship. So it's not that I mind the way the friendship is portrayed, but again, it's the thing that most feels out of place. I mean, not that I've read every single Justice League story, but I never stopped to think about the fact that Arthur Curry and Barry wouldn't get along. They always seem very friendly, and
Yeah.
comrades in arms. And that's certainly not the case here. But what's interesting is as this story in this issue plays out, they sort of circumstances as they unravel or as they kind of move along here. Both Arthur and Barry are sort of forced to put themselves in the other person's shoes, with a little bit of empathy, and that makes it where they realize that they are friends. They're more alike than different. They have certain challenges that are, very similar, and so in the end, it ends up their friendship is reestablished, maybe even strengthened. So it ends up being an interesting take on the relationship between Barry Allen and Arthur Curry. As far as the story itself, tons of action, which allowed Vasco to showcase that great art that I mentioned. But for me, the thing that I'll remember about the story the most Not that the villain wasn't interesting, but in a way, the villain ends up being a little bit more of a plot device than it first appeared. Um, and so I think the lasting part of the story that'll stick with me is that relationship between Aquaman and Flash here. But again, because it's not really the same relationship they have in the regular DCU, I don't know how long lasting this will be for me. Um, One other thing that I noticed, and I don't know, I've seen this before on digital copies, but I don't know if it hasn't always translated to print. Um, I don't know if it's purposeful from the artist or the inker. I mean, I'm assuming Vasco's working digitally, but there's a scene where Aquaman is jumping after they get inside the ship, and there's a big what looks like a thumbprint in the background. Did you notice that, Rocky?
Uh,
I think it's
uh,
scroll up a few more pages,
Apologies,
and I've seen it specifically in X-Men comics before, where it's almost like the inker. Yeah,
I
that page
found it.
right there. Do you
Yeah.
see right above, like right in that blue space between his hand that's reaching out and the hand that's
Oh,
holding the
yeah.
trident?
It does look like a fingerprint. Yeah.
Yeah, that's got to be a thumbprint, right? And you know, I just wonder. But I've seen artists in the past use fingerprints like that before to kind of add texture. Just thought it was interesting, something I noticed, but
Yeah, you got a good
didn't know
eye
if
there,
you.
Augie. I tell you what, I wouldn't have saw that.
Yeah, I noticed that on my art. You know, usually once I finish reading the book, I'll go back through and just do kind of an art review. So, anyway, it ended up being a pretty solid book. Again, I'll remember it mostly for its art and the unique portrayal of the relationship between um, Arthur and Barry more than anything. What did you think?
This was a very much a decompressed story. I'll tell you that much. I mean, there's I guess there's 46 pages here digitally, so probably I'm guessing 39 or 40, maybe 40 pages of story here in this third volume, and a good chunk of this wasn't necessary to finish the story, but we get even at the end we got like no less than five or six double page spreads where they're just showing where Lansing and Kelling are just scripting, you know, uh, Flash and Aquaman sort of reflecting on the world after they've saved it and how majestic the superheroes are, and and the highlight of this story from the very beginning has been the relationship between Arthur Curry and uh, Barry Allen, and frankly, they don't have much of a relationship, and in fact, it was premised upon betrayal. Arthur Curry was using Barry Allen in order to gain access to the Speed Force to build these uh, Atlantean ships that could travel in space, and uh, and that was basically the that's one thing that Barry Allen felt that he was betrayed and that he couldn't get over. But they had to come together in order to win the day here, and they do so. I think, frankly, in spectacular fashion. Arthur Curry has a very interesting conversation with the aliens, with the voids and the song, and I think the central conceit is that, you know, these two very on the surface, I can't imagine more different heroes than the Flash and Aquaman, and how they come together and have their own kind of, dare I say it, song themselves. They're for you know they're the song they put together in defeating the enemies. It's pretty cool, and I enjoyed the story, and this was a character based story, and this was a story of about relationships between Arthur and Mira, about between Barry and Iris, and I thought it worked. I thought it worked quite well, and at the end, I mean, again, beautiful art. Like, I mean, you mentioned it. I mean, just really gorgeous art, and again, a whole series of double page spreads, one after the other, just absolutely gorgeous, showing highlighting the heroes fighting the bad guys all over the globe. I mean, so it's quite good. And so it's not, even though this Void song has to do with both Barry and Arthur, Flash, and Aquaman, it does highlight in this final issue at least the all the members of the Justice League coming back. And overall, I quite like this story. I found personally on Twitter a lot of readers I thought were giving this series a hard time. And and that surprised me because I've really, you know, I've enjoyed this, and I have a brand new respect. I hope that this redefines the relationship between Barry Allen and Arthur Curry, because I don't think it's that far out of sync with the mainstream continuity. I kind of like it because, frankly, it elevates Arthur Curry a little bit more in my eyes. And Barry Allen has always been sort of a kind of a boring kind of guy. I've never liked him anyway. I'm a Wally West fan, so I actually like Barry in this story more after reading it than I ever have before, if I'm brutally honest. But
Yeah, I agree, and when I was talking about him, focus a lot on that relationship between Barry and Arthur, but you're right. It does it focuses not just on them, but when the rest of the Justice League come back, I do like that. Um, Colin and Jackson, focus on a little more than the kind of the professional relationship of these heroes. I mean, they
yeah,
really are friends. Despite maybe Batman's the one that kind of gives people a hard time and kind of wants to be all business, but even he softens a little bit, and that it is a great scene when Arthur's like, talking about how much Barry does, and he needs some time off. So yeah, it ended up being a really great story
yeah,
in
and
the end.
at the end, Arthur Curry, Aquaman, stands up for Barry because he wants to have a break, but Batman and the rest of the league want a rundown on what happened, and Aquaman stands up and says, "Hey, this guy's been working his ass off. Let him go home to his wife." And
Yeah,
so it was good. I also want to give a shout out to the artistic design. I love the costume, this new costume for the armor that Aquaman is wearing in Flash. I think they look particularly awesome. I just love it. I are aesthetically, I love the look. Aquaman's new sort of the visuals, the sort of armored, armored shoulder metal shoulder pad costume that he's wearing or whatever the hell it is. It looks pretty cool. I like the design. So the design work here I like as well. It makes it stand out too. So I actually hope I see this design for Aquaman more in the future, to be honest.
yeah, exactly. All right, well, let's move on. We have Batman the Knight, number 8 of 10. This is written by Chip Zdarsky. Art is by Carmine Di Giandomenico. Colors by Yvonne Placencia. Lettered by Pat Barroso. Really solid issue. I'm going to be sad to see this series end, if I'm being honest. It's been so good. Not We've talked before about not necessarily what we expected. More intimate story as opposed to this, big broad overview of Bruce traveling around, learning the various skills that it's going to take him to become Batman. It's been a much more emotional story, and as I said, a much more intimate story than I expected. What did you think of this issue?
Well, before I get to this issue, I wasn't here. We had a little tornado run through my city when you reviewed by yourself the Night #7, Batman the Night #7, and it was my favorite issue so far with Zatanna. I thought it was fantastic.
Oh yeah,
I absolutely love that. I thought it was one of my best. I think it's one of the best. It was in my view, just a quick note. I just feel compelled to say something about it because I thought it didn't. Sardasky did an excellent job, the best job I've ever seen of explaining, at least in my mind, in my own headcanon, why Batman and magic have never really gotten along very well. The whole idea that Batman it's very difficult for Batman to sort of let go because he's so obsessed, and because he's got that darkness and that obsession with him to fight crime, and it makes it difficult for him to truly be a master of magic. And I like the way that was explored there and throughout that entire story. And I think it just really did a really good job. And but would have more to say about it, but that was then. But going into this one, in this particular issue, this is Bruce Wayne. In this issue, Bruce Wayne continues his training, and as he's going through training in various cities through Metropolis. He ends up being trained by this spider, this sky spider in Metropolis, and or pardon me, in I don't know, in Shangri La or someplace in Europe. Because they're speaking Shanghainese, and then he ends up in being trained at some place in Metropolis and Morocco, and he believes that Anton is always one step ahead of him, and that Anton is even going so far as to kill certain masters of certain things, and he continues to be very disappointed in his best friend, Bruce Wayne. What under the character work that I think really comes into play in this issue, and that Sardasky does so well, is that Bruce Wayne is, he's getting better and better, and he wants to train his mind. He wants to actually be more cold-hearted. Because he feels, in many ways, he feels almost like at the beginning that maybe his thinking is a weakness, and that's why he ends up finding himself in front of this. He goes to uh, what's the name of the guy that trains him in this issue? This Daniel Captio, who's
yeah,
the smartest man in the world. And he goes to this guy. He ends up going to he wants his mind to be ready, and he wants to become cold and terrifying, because he wants to, of course, that's what he wants to be, to fight the criminal element. And this Daniel Captio is the smartest man, and he knows how to train your body. He knows how to through your mind, being able to get your body to do what it wants and to trick your body into doing certain things. And he's a really good teacher, but he's also a little bit cold-hearted, and he kind of sees, yeah, and he can see the struggle that Bruce Wayne is going through. And ultimately, what I love about the issue is that it ends up that one of Ra's al Ghul's underlings, this Harris Zuma, called the Still, ends up looking for Bruce Wayne, and he ends up defeating Anton. Anton shows up at Daniel's doorstep, Daniel Captio's doorstep, and right, we've been thinking for the last few issues that Anton has been this bad guy, that he's been doing all these, one step ahead of Bruce Wayne and potentially killing all these people, and that he's really lost his way. And there's some doubt now. It's like, Anton was actually trying to follow Bruce Wayne, and trying to follow Bruce and actually protect him, and he fought this Harris Zuma, but ended up getting defeated. And this issue sort of culminates with, Bruce Wayne, seeing Anton all bloody and on the ground, arriving, and Anton warning him, and then he has his battle against Harris Zuma. He defeats this Zuma character, the Still, only to have the Still tell him that, look, I lied to you, or rather, clearly Daniel Captio lied to him, because Mr. Captio character, he was lying to Bruce, telling him that he had killed his family, killed his friends, that Alfred was dead. But it was all part of a psychological game that Captio was doing, to just try to get into the head of Bruce Wayne, to manipulate him, to test him, to see how far he could go, to test his mental boundaries, and could he fight and focus even through all that kind of stress, and and upon feeling that kind of loss. And he succeeds rather spectacularly. Bruce Wayne manages not only to defeat the Still, but he actually chooses not to kill him. Something which, that's the sign to us readers that he's very close to becoming the Batman that we know him to be. Someone who has the capacity to kill, but always, when he's on that precipice, has the ability to pull himself back and choose not to kill. And it ends with an invitation by this Still to invite him to meet Ra's al Ghul, which of course is undoubtedly going to be the bigger chapter in Batman's in Bruce Wayne's training, that will ultimately lead him to become the Batman, and in Ra's al Ghul's eyes, the next chosen one. And so I really enjoyed this. I thought the art was fantastic. I thought the action sequences were great. I really liked the rapport. I love the dialogue between Daniel Captio and Bruce Wayne. The way there was like a verbal tug of war back and forth, and the just these are very powerful individuals that were at the top of their game, and to have it all come together like this, especially when that we've had some really good stories from issue one, from Zatanna to the I apologize. I can't remember all the names of these, all the ones that trained him. But there was a point. Each issue could be read independent of the other, and you could still get something out of each issue, and you could see Bruce Wayne get better and better. So, what do you think?
Yeah, I really enjoyed it on a lot of levels. I mean, first of all, this idea, this philosophy that Captio has, that we're all insignificant, nothing matters, everything matters. We've certainly used that phrase to talk about DC current continuity and how they're trying to say every story matters. So I thought that was a little meta.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that Zdarsky's doing it on purpose, but it still was interesting coming in the context that it does. Also, this idea that Captio is talking about not being able to live amongst other people and then still be above them and sort of analyze them. I thought that was interesting as well. And then, of course, in the end, we find out he's sort of manipulating Bruce, and not necessarily in a malevolent way, but just in a way. He's so much of a slave to his curiosity and his thirst for knowledge and his thirst to, obtain knowledge and watch individuals. And certainly Bruce Wayne is somebody that he wants to watch as he moves through his life because he's so fascinating to Capdio. So I thought that was really interesting. This whole idea of mind over matter in terms of not allowing yourself to feel pain and whatever. It certainly adds to the mystique, and it's something that Batman's been able to do over time, and certainly with the power creep we've talked about before. You kind of wonder how he learned that or whatever. So I appreciate just in terms of building the story and adding to the mythos of Bruce and his journey and whatnot. Zdarsky's doing a really good job on that level. Also, we did speculate on this Anton before and if he was actually the Ghost Maker or not. And as the story has played out, it turns out yes, he is the Ghost Maker. That's in the current Batman continuity. And so I also like that Zdarsky's weaving that back in because obviously this is a character that James Tynion only created a few years ago, but has roots back, retro continuity, retcon, as it's referred to, has roots all the way back in Bruce's earliest beginnings of training, and we see that here. So I appreciate that as well. If anything, I think you had mentioned it, wondering if it was him, and I was like, yeah, wondering as well. But the thing that threw us off was the fact that he was so bloodthirsty, and he was apparently trying to kill Bruce, and that's certainly not the relationship he has with Ghostmaker now. And then we find out in this issue, it wasn't Anton at all, like you mentioned. It's Ra's al Ghul, this still character who's working on behalf of Ra's al Ghul. So yeah, I thought this was a fantastic issue. I thought that the Carmine Di Gian Domenico art, it's been very solid throughout. He's not my favorite style of artist because his style is a little bit looser than I typically prefer, but he has a lot of emotion in his art because it is a looser style, and that certainly works with this idea of there's an aspect to this younger Bruce Wayne where he's sort of on the edge of out of control, and that is very apparent in this story, and the whole reason he's searching out this Capteo person. He's just not sure if he can do this, right? The whole point is to be trained to control his emotions. And I really like that aspect of the story. And Capteo even says, yeah, you came to me asking to learn how to be a sociopath, basically to isolate your emotions. And I'm fascinated either way. If you go that direction, what's going to happen? Or if you go the other way, which is obviously the way we know that Bruce eventually goes in terms of using that anger, using that loss of his parents, using that trauma to fuel himself for his never-ending war against criminals. So, I'm kind of in the camp of Capteo, in terms of that's a fascinating person. Either way, if Bruce had gone the sociopath way and suppressed his emotions, you could make the argument he might have been even more successful. But maybe that's bad for the villains because he probably would have been killing him, taking a more logical, clinical approach, right? With that revolving door, and we'll talk more about that later. But anyway, it's a fantastic job, Zdarsky, and this is going back to talking about Zdarsky's first issue of the regular series, 125. Well, I was a little underwhelmed by it because when he writes Bruce here, it is so emotional, and that first issue lacked a bit of emotion for me. But 126 kind of started bringing it back, so we'll see where that continues to go. But yeah, I'm very impressed with this Night series. And for some reason, I was thinking it was only 8 issues. And when I saw the end where it said to be continued, I was like, oh, they're going to do a second series. But then I went and double checked. I'm like, oh, no, it's 10.
Yeah.
It's 10 issues, which still, like, we said at the very beginning, doesn't feel like enough. And I don't know. I almost would like to see this continue. Obviously, we have 2 more issues. I don't know how it's going to wrap up. But I like Zdarsky telling Batman stories in this era.
Yeah. I like any story with Batman in his training era because there's an infinite number of stories to be told in that regard. But this is the first time in at least in my memory anyway, which is usually pretty bad, but but it's the first time where we're getting a consistent set of stories. Well, frankly, 10 issues where from the same writer, so we're going to have a unified theme. And you kind of touched upon an aspect of that I really like, and that is this is a Bruce Wayne who does have a connection to his emotions, and in a sense he wants to detach from them, but he slowly comes to realize, particularly in this issue, that his emotions and his love is actually his strength. And because he was, I think, comparing himself to Anton and maybe others, thinking that he had to be dark or cold or shut off from the world in order to be effective. But I think he's realizing that he doesn't have to be that way. And I think that's what I sort of like about this, and why I also like the Zatanna issue, last issue, and issue 7. So all in all, like I really like this progression of stories. I'm really curious to see how it ends.
Yeah, I am as well. All right, up next we have oh crap, I just closed it. It's Black Adam issue number 3. This was written by Christopher Priest. Rafa Sandoval is the artist, and sorry, I'm opening it back up so I can get the full credits. Uh, this is, I mean, you got to say one thing about Christopher Priest. He's very consistent in his storytelling style. I know his storytelling style is not for everybody, um, but it's, and I don't fault Priest at all for this, but I think, DC is trying so hard to really kind of up the profile of Black Adam because they have the movie coming, and I think it causes a little bit of confusion. I think even for longtime readers. So Matt Herms does the colors. Troy Petrie is on the letters, um, and what I mean by causing some confusion, it used to be there was only one version of Black Adam, and nobody ever thought anything of it. Right? That's just the way that it was. And then recently with Future State and some of the other stories going around, all of a sudden it's like there's a bunch of different versions of Black Adam. So maybe it goes back to what we were saying earlier about DC Comics wanting to have its cake and eat it too. My understanding is it was always Tet Adam, right? And now in this story they're referring to as Theo, and
Yeah.
even with this Malik White, who is supposedly a descendant of Black Adam and is given the power of Black Adam when Black Adam died last issue. Um, and then they bring him back in this issue, and we also get some scenes of the afterlife. And I I confess to being a little bit confused. Like,
Yeah. Well, I will say it's
what?
based on the New 52. It's based on the actual New 52 origin of Black Adam. That's what he's actually
Okay, so the
embracing.
one.
Because when he's having visions of his nephew that he betrayed to become Black Adam, that's the New 52 origin of Black Adam, and when he's been having memories in the previous issues about that, and these visions that he has, this nefarious force that appears to be like his, I guess, his nephew. It's related to that particular origin, and one of
So
the
you're talking
different.
about the 52 weekly series?
No, I'm talking about I'm talking about the New 52 era. What, like Black Adam's origin? It was partly addressed in the 52 series, but his his origins. His origin in that era of the JSA and the new 52 era, it was a slightly different origin than you know than now. So
So were those the ones that were the? I'm trying to. Do you remember where that was? Like, was that they were Justice League backups? New 52 Justice League backups?
uh, I'm trying. Uh,
Just wondering. I mean, obviously, I haven't read it, so I'm missing some context for this
Yeah,
story
no,
here.
you want this, you want the context of the specific comics. I'd have to look that up for you, but
Yeah,
I just know from talking to others and what have you, and my recollection was sort of like, because I wasn't sure, and so when I looked it up, and then when I spoke to others, it was like, oh, okay, that makes more sense, because I didn't know, because in the early issues here, Black Adam was having. It looked like he was, his nephew was making him feel guilty, and he looked like Black Adam had betrayed his nephew and stole the powers of Shazam, and all that was related to, that's his old, that's his, that New 52 era of an origin, and Christopher Priest never really told anybody what era he was working with. He just sort of went with that, and that's sort of a little bit contradictory to, again, it's not a big deal, but there is some disjointedness here, especially since we got like Teddy, like the
yeah, the
in Teen
young.
Titans Academy, and then we got a slightly different than with even Jeff Johns in the backup with Shazam and the backup of the Justice League in the New 52.
Yeah, and even what's
That
going on right
origin,
now yeah,
right?
and Dark Crisis, with what he's doing, saying,
Yeah,
this Justice League that John Kent put together is garbage. I don't want to have anything to do with him, and he goes off on his own.
yeah.
So yeah, it's just,
And in
I
fact,
mean,
that's
I
the
get it.
backup. That's the Black Adam origin. Is the backup to the New 52 Justice League. That's what the
Yeah,
origin of Black Adam is. I just finished
so
talking about. I just answered my own question.
yeah, so yeah, it's again, like, I think disjointed is a good word to use, and I get it. Like, you're trying to raise his profile, you're trying to have him in a lot of different places, but man, you need a little bit of consistency. Um, and I will say that Black Adam has maybe never had that much consistency because he has had different iterations over the years. And the other aspect of that you go to is the fact that he's even on the Justice League in the first place. Like, if you go back to his earliest times when he's showing up in the Fawcett comics, he's evil, he's bad. And in a way, in this issue, Priest gets a little meta with that because even his supposed friend here, the guy that works for the State Department, Blastine Yiggle or Weigel, even he's like, yeah, the relationship's complicated. He was my friend, and then Malik's like, well, maybe we can bring him back. Wait, are you sure you want to bring him back? He's Dracula. He's evil. And it's
Yeah.
like, well, which is it? You say he's your friend, like you miss him and you want him back, but then you don't want him back. So yeah, it's a little contradictory in a way. But I will say Christopher Priest is the right writer to be writing this, and I think it'll all come together in the end. The other thing that I can't help but be reminded of is Priest's Black Panther run, right? Which the movie's based on, especially when you talk about the Martin Freeman character. What's his? Do you recall his name in the
Uh,
MCU? I know the actor's name is Martin Freeman, but
um,
he plays the
no.
plays like the State Department guy who's sort of the POV character um, to to T'Challa. Um,
Oh
I'm
no.
looking it up. I'm looking it up right now, but
Yeah.
yeah, I can't help but feel like in a little bit of a way, Priest is repeating himself because here we go with this ruler of a technologically, well, not nowhere near as technologically advanced as Wakanda, but still the ruler of a small country, and he has this white guy who's sort of a small sidekick in a way. Everett K. Ross is his name, Black Panther. Um, so yeah, a little bit of a repeat from Christopher Priest. So this is a complicated story. Again, it's not anything that's surprising given who's writing it. Christopher Priest definitely has a style, but yeah, I guess I just need to go and brush up on my Black Adam um,
Well,
more recent history. And all that being said, this is still an enjoyable comic, and I think it'll all tie up in the end. I mean, I sort of feel 3 issues in to this, I feel sort of the same way I felt when I was reading his Christopher Priest Deathstroke run. But it pays off. Like, the longer you read it, the more that it pays off once the little seeds that he plants along the way start bearing fruit. What did you
yeah.
think?
Well, I didn't mind this. I had to read this twice again, and I find myself reading every comic I read. I'm reading twice nowadays, but that's a good thing. I actually enjoyed it. I didn't mind it. It was this is Black Adam's in a coma. He's supposed to basically be dead, and Black Adam even thought he had died because he'd given his power to Malik, his descendant, who became White Adam. And Malik, but then is a pretty good medical student doctor, and he tries using the Shazam lightning to actually basically give give Black Adam's heart a jolt, because he wisely determines that, well, maybe if I can't save Teth Adam's life, maybe I can bring Black Adam out of him. And Black Adam is actually in the Mesopotamian underworld called Urkala, which is sort of like well, I guess it's like the it's like sort of like Hades, but it's like Urkala. It's the Mesopotamian underworld where he confronts Ishtar and Eri, who are basically the goddesses of the dead. I'm oversimplifying it. I had to Google some of this stuff because I don't know who these Egyptian goddesses are. And these are different goddesses than we normally have seen in Black Adam's past. So Christopher Priest is adding different gods here, as far as I'm aware, to sort of upset the apple cart a little bit. And Sargon of Akkad, he ends up battling this guy named Sargon, and uh, like I say, there a lot of this stuff is a lot of great visuals, a lot of battle is taking place, and ultimately, Black Adam is ultimately resurrected because of the efforts made by Malik. So Black Adam's ultimate defeat of Sargon, it coincides, or rather, I should put it another way. Yeah, it's his defeat. It's his defeat of Sargon that coincides with him being coming out of his coma, where he finds himself in the hospital beside Malik, who is So they're both So this issue ends with basically the entire issue took place in Black Adam's head while Malik was operating on him, essentially, and so. And all we really need to know is that now we got some Egyptian gods and goddesses that are now going to be part of Black Adam's lore, and that may be an attempt by Christopher Priest to further distinguish Black Adam from the wizard and the gods that make up Shazam in Billy Batson's universe. That would be my guess. So it's not bad, but it probably takes a couple of reads to really get into it.
Yeah, who do you think that Baron character is? I didn't recognize him.
That Baron.
Yeah, isn't that what Black or what Billy says at the end when the guy, he's asking him for oh, never mind. I'm
Oh, what?
thinking of the next book we're gonna talk. Is
Okay.
it the next book?
Okay.
Which one is it that Billy shows up? Oh, I'm thinking of, is it
Right. Billy
DC
doesn't show
Vampire?
up here.
Yeah, he shows up in another book at the end. Yeah, I think it's DC Vampires, the second issue, right at the end. Right? Yeah, that's who I was thinking about. All right.
Yeah, yeah, that's
Anyway,
right.
moving on.
We'll get there.
Dark Crisis, Young Justice number 3. I do have a question about who the big bad might be in this one. If you have any theories, there's only one person that comes to mind for me, and I'm not sure because obviously this ties into Dark Crisis. It's called Dark Crisis, Young Justice. Um, but man, I'm kind of at a loss. There's only one person I can think of that it could be, but I don't feel like I'm right. Anyway, written by Megan Fitzmartin, Laura Braga's the artist, Luis Guerrero on colors, Pat Brosso on letters, the Trinity of Trauma. What do you think of this?
Well, first I will say this: that Megan Fitzmartin is doing her best. It's clear that she has familiarized herself with the general history of all the characters, and what this really feels like to me. This feels like a world without a Teen Titans. You know how we're getting the world without a Justice League, and the Justice League members are all in their like their dream world, controlled by Pariah. This actually feels like these Teen Titan that all the members of Young Justice are in the sort of like their dream world from the '90s, but it's not Pariah that's controlling it. It's somebody else that we don't know, and I. I it's actually leaked in Future Solicit, so I've read Future Solicit, so I know who it is. I'm not going to spoil it, but it makes sense. Um, Regardless, if this feels um, what Fitzmartin is trying to do here, Megan is trying to have it so that all these characters have some fun while they're trying to figure out what the hell's going on. And it's clear that this whoever is controlling things, their lieutenant or their underling is this Wonder Girl. This Wonder Girl of this world is trying to get them to accept this world. That you fit in here. I mean, you fit in better in this world that you're on now than you do in your other one. So stay here. And meanwhile, the entire issue, even like last issue, it's Impulse and Super and Connor and Tim Drake. They're all talking to each other, and at different times, each one of them seems to take turns being the voice of reason. I find that Impulse, for the most part, seems to know that this isn't right. We got to go here. Nothing feels right here. And then Connor will have be the voice of reason, and then Tim will, and meanwhile, they're different villains that they've confronted and have traumatized them in the past, like Deathstroke traumatized Impulse at one point by shooting him in the ankle, and then Captain Boomerang was there, and along with Slade Wilson, Deathstroke, and I'm missing one here, Lex Luthor uh, confronting Connor Kent, and it's obvious to the reader and it's obvious to the characters that this is wonky. And my one criticism is that I frankly, I haven't had fun. I missed the review of the second issue. I really didn't like the second issue. I don't like this third issue. The only issue I liked was the first issue because I thought it was going to be more wonky and fun throughout, and it hasn't been that. This has been, I think, a vain attempt at it, and I say that respecting what I think Megan Fitzmartin is been trying to do. And by the way, she has my full props. I I don't know how on earth you would try to make sense of the Young Justice continuity and make a good story out of it. I personally would have taken a different approach and just had a new members of Young Justice or just had a past story myself. But it is what it is. I know what I don't like. I didn't like what Bendis did, where he crammed all them in and didn't care about continuity. At least with Fitzmartin, she's at least attempting some semblance of continuity and acknowledging everything, but I don't find much meat for a story here. So somebody's manipulating them, but to what end? And since I kind of know what's going on, I'm not I'm not really in this for the long haul, to be honest with you. Uh, but I do give her props for effort. It's just not resonating with me. I like the although I love the first issue, but this went in a direction that I really I'm not a big fan of. But what do you think?
Well, I mean, I look at it, it's got to tie into Dark Crisis, so I can kind of understand why it doesn't have the feel that the old Young Justice book did. It's a little bit, takes itself a little more seriously. And I don't have the history with the old or first Young Justice title that you do, so maybe that's why. You say you know who the big bad is. My guess is Mixia's Pitalik, but I don't know how that would tie into uh, Dark Crisis. So could it
I
be
don't I don't think
Pariah? Like,
I think this is false advertising. I'll be straight up and say it. I don't think this has anything to do with our crisis, but um, you know, but
other than the fact that this all came about because they're mourning the supposed loss of the Justice League. I mean,
well, sure, that's a
that,
tenuous connection. To
that
me, that's like the
yeah,
red skies of the original
yeah,
crisis. I mean,
yeah, yeah, and the argument could be made that the whole entire Justice League 75, Death of the Justice League, whatever,
yeah,
was false advertising as well. I mean, we won't get too
sure.
far into it, but
We'll
I
get
mean,
that's a rabbit hole we
and,
don't want to go down.
yeah, yeah, exactly, and the fact that even when it's Death of Superman, nobody really believes, especially now. Death of Superman was what 30 years ago now, actually 30 years this year,
Yeah, right.
1992.
That's how old
Uh,
we are, Jace. We're getting old.
yeah, I know. God, I don't want to think about that. But my point being that, yeah, nobody, everybody knows, especially now, comics are the center of pop culture and billion-dollar movies or whatever. You're not going to kill your golden goose. You're not going to kill Superman. You're not going to kill Batman. Regardless of whatever storyline. So you're not going to kill the Justice League. At this point, I mean, Jonathan Hickman may have it, the most closely to accurate with making the X-Men immortal, because these characters are immortal. Let's face it.
Yeah.
You can kill them. They're going to keep coming back, like turning up like a bad penny, or keep coming back like cockroaches, or whatever. So I don't know who this is in terms of big bad. I say Mixius Pitalik because, this is a whole reality that exists. I agree with you 100% that it feels wonky. I like a lot of what Fitzmartin is doing here, especially with Impulse. Bart is not being taken seriously. And so, that resonates with me because it feels very accurate with how he's been portrayed over the years. And, he's always been portrayed as sort of this goofy, comedic relief, but not even being self-aware enough to know. And, she's exploring some of those ideas. So I like that aspect of it. But I mean, there are problems. I mean, why does Connor look like he looks? That's the first thing. Like, he doesn't wear the leather jacket anymore. He doesn't even have this haircut when we see him in regular continuity. So I get that it's, trying to be a bit of a throwback. But it's a little more problematic to me of this wonky continuity that DC has right now, where, man, I don't know how anything fits together. There's no editorial oversight in terms of, hey, this is what this character looks like now. Maybe it's because it's a different reality. They're looking like they used to look, and it's a callback or whatever. Right? Like, I
Yeah.
get that, but
Mhm.
I've said before, as much as this Dark Crisis is going to last until the end of the year, I would hope that if there's anything that comes out of it, it's just a little, and again, it's a cliche or whatever, but just clean it up a little bit. I just want a little bit of consistency, because everything right now is so wildly inconsistent, right? Like we've talked about the Justice League being dead, quote unquote. Really, they're just missing. They're in these happiness prisons, but yet every single one of their comics, whether it's Batman or Wonder Woman or Superman, they're all still coming out. They're all still coming out month after month. They're not missing, like so. I mean, Superman is not even on Earth. He's on Warworld.
Yeah,
Like
yeah, it's
the continuity has never
nah, I know.
like
Well,
it,
unfortunately,
it,
it's an editorial thing that you either and the genie was out of the bottle quite a while ago, and they were bound to these stories, and it was kind of wonky. And Williamson has clearly been doing in many ways his own thing for the longest time, and it's the only thing we can hope for is after Dark Crisis. Hopefully, there'll be some indication that there's going to be more of a general better
just
direction.
tighten it up.
Yeah,
Like I think about like the last time the DC was, or think about the last few times where DC has really been successful in terms of sales, right? I would say Rebirth. Before that was when the New 52 first launched, and before that was probably right around Infinite Crisis,
yeah.
right? With the 52, and coming out of that, the 52 weekly series or whatever. You look at those three eras, what do they have all in common? The continuity was very tight. Everything was well planned. You can make an argument whether it was well executed or not, and whether Dan Didio had a heavy hand or not, but you can't argue that the continuity wasn't really tight. And I get it. Like for the New 52, the continuity went off the rails really quickly because, they only planned ahead so many issues. And then after, it was problematic of the reboot and what should count and what not. And then before you knew it, you had, well, how could Batman have had like 4 different Robins within 5 years? And yeah, it goes off the rails really quickly. But when you read like the first 6 months of New 52, there weren't continuity glitches, not like that, not where, this person showing up looking one way in one book and in another book is completely different. You just didn't have that. It just didn't happen. Same thing with Rebirth, same thing with Infinite Crisis era. So let's get back to that. I mean, that's one of the things that us DC fans love the most about it. And it's been so bad for so long.
Yeah.
Kind of tired of it, to be honest with you. So anyway, let's move on. Up next, we have Batman Superman World's Finest, issue number 6. This is from writer Mark Waid. Travis Moore is the artist. Tamara Bonvillain does the colors. Aditya Bidikar on letters. This is a standalone. It sort of ties into what was going on with the previous storyline with the demon Nezha, and we saw that the Dick Grayson Robin, while traveling through time, got separated from Supergirl and lost. So we find out that he's, back in the past. He leaves a message, and Superman and Batman figure out what era he's in. I don't think we're ever given. 1892 is the year, and he's become part of this traveling circus. And so it plays into sort of the origins of Dick Grayson and how he grew up. So that all works really, really well. I like the feel of the story more necessarily than the pacing or the specific character moments or story beats that happen in the story, because it does harken back to um, a previous era of comics where you used to have one and done stories.
Yeah, it
Like you
feels
can
really
pick
good.
this book, you could pick this issue up and read it and enjoy it, and it works wonderfully, completely on its own. You don't need anything else. You don't actually need to read the previous 5 issue story arc to know what's going on. They give you everything you need to know, and it stands on its own, and it's a lot of fun. So this is Mark Waid. Obviously, he's read hundreds, if not thousands, of those types of stories. Uh, when he was growing up reading comics, and so not surprising, but I still appreciate that he did this, and it does stand on its own, and it's a very good story in terms of character of who Dick Grayson is, and reminding us how much he cares about his origins, and how quickly he can figure things out. Despite the fact that he's trapped over 100 years in the past, 150 years in the past almost.
Yeah.
So I enjoyed a lot of the little smaller parts of the story that Wade puts in here. I mean, this all made sense. Throwback to Superman and his original costume. Like, a lot of people wonder, why does Superman have his underwear on the outside of his costume? Well, it's a throwback to the circus strongmen who didn't wear anything but just those briefs, right? The rest of their bodies were unclothed to show off their massive muscles. That's where that's why he has the quote unquote underwear on the outside. And here he actually gets to be a circus strongman, even if only for a few pages. So little things like that really help sell this story. And I thought the art by Travis Moore and the colors by Tamara Bonvillain were excellent as well. So yeah, this was a fun story. This World's Finest series is really firing on all cylinders. What do you think, Rob?
Yeah, I agree. Mark Waid just absolutely nailed it. He proved in the previous 5 issues that he could tell a fantastic story arc with a beginning, a middle, and an end. And that ended with Robin being lost in time, Supergirl feeling guilty, and Robin, Dick Grayson, being smart enough to leave a message in time. Because he's back in time. He ends up in Corto Maltese in 1892 with the circus. This one shot story is called The Flying Grayson, and he leaves a message for Batman, of course, Batman and Superman to see, and of course they get it. And I love how Batman shows up. All of a sudden, Dick Grayson is there and he's swinging on the trapeze, and then all of a sudden, Batman shows up and catches him as he flies off the as he's flying off the trapeze, and it's a great introduction of Batman to the story, and I thought it was quite good, and it was kind of silly, and there was just a tinge of a Silver Age DC kind of feel to it that put a smile on my face. Yet just enough of modern day verisimilitude that I could enjoy it. And it was just basically, Dick Grayson saying, "Look, I know we got to go back to our time, but I suspect there's some theft, there's some criminal stuff that's going on here in the circus. Do you mind if we stay here for the next couple of days? I feel I need to do this." And it was, and then the whole story comes through, and Travis Moore's art just absolutely nails it. He's the perfect artist for this. Of just, I mean, you nailed it with Superman as the strong man, and Batman with the mask, and Robin. I mean, they fit right into a circus of any superhero, anybody wearing tights and looking ridiculous would. And so, and then of course you've got crime, you got great art, you've got bad guys, and you got a great resolution, and it's this is a feel good story, and at the end they leave the circus, and this is a really good feel good story. This is a perfect end cap when you think we had such a dark serious story back with in the previous 5 issues with the demon Nezha, and was deathly serious and everything else. To have the capstone of that story be this story, I think is absolutely perfect. And this is Mark Waid making a statement. This is Mark Waid. I've said it, everything I hope Mark Waid would be when he came back to DC, he has been. And he always said he wouldn't come back to DC for as long as Dan Didio was there. Didio was gone. And Mark Waid has been under the radar. He's been doing nose to the grindstone. He hasn't been on social media all that much. He's just put his nose to the grindstone. He's written great stories. Even people that are critics of Mark Waid are loving World's Finest because they're focusing on the story. It's a great story, and he's telling fantastic stories. And we anybody who knows Mark Waid, for once my expectations are met with someone, a writer. Mark Waid has exceeded them with this series, and I hope that moving forward for DC Comics, that the Mark Waid sensibility, his style of writing here, I hope they use this as a template mixed in with a little bit of Jeff Johns, and I think the future of DC is bright moving forward. That's me in the best kind of hopeful manner I can be in.
Yeah, I'm real curious to see what the next story arc is going to be because he did such a great job with the first one.
Yeah.
And going back to, not to beat continuity like a dead horse here, but uh, similar to what Tomasi and Brad Walker did with Detective Comics, where that, especially that Arkham Knight storyline they started off with, it was sort of timeless. It could fit in anywhere. That's one thing you could say. As much as Mark Waid did, pay homage to what Joshua Williamson had done in the Robin series by using the Demon Nezha, that those first 5 issues really are, they could fit anywhere,
Yeah.
right?
Are they
It's
good?
not so tied in, but it's also not there's nothing so specific that happens that it can't be happening now in current DC continuity, other than the fact that Dick Grayson's Robin, I guess, if you want to point to something. Obviously, Dick Grayson's currently Nightwing, but anyway, let's move on. Catwoman number 46 is up next from writer Tinny Howard. Sammy Basri does the pencils, Vicente Cifuentes on inks, Jordi Belair on colors, and Lucas Gattoni on letters. What do you think of this one?
Well, first I got to give a shout out to. I mean, I criticize the existence of variant covers, but I mean, I'm not a fool. I can certainly appreciate beautiful art. And this is actually one where every single, all four. Now we've shown four, or there's three variants as far as I'm aware, and maybe there's more, but this is on the preview copies. But every single one of these covers is absolutely gorgeous, including cover A, which I think cover A's have been my favorite so far. I'm really loving the covers, which is very typical for Catwoman. Catwoman comic, regardless of the quality of the story itself, is always usually generally has pretty good covers. But Teeny Howard here, this issue basically wraps up sort of a dangling little plot point regarding Iko Hasagara, who was the head of the Hasagara crime family, and of course this is one. This was a head of the Hasagara crime family. That's Iko's the one who she was the sort of like Catwoman's sort of apprentice back in the Genevieve Valentine Catwoman run, and in this tells the story essentially of how Selena wants to leave the city, and so she's with the help of Valmont and Iko, they basically they manipulate Black Mask and the other two Dons, Don Tommaso and Don Drago, into basically believing that Iko and Catwoman had a falling out, because one of the things that surprised me here is that apparently it's common knowledge in the Gotham underworld that Iko and Catwoman had a sexual liaison. That really sort of surprised me that there's this. So it must have been a worst kept secret, because Don Tommaso mentioned Don Tommaso, the mobster, he mentioned it here in this story, and so Iko's credibility is she's they think that she's nothing, that she's in league with Catwoman, and Black Mask actually is working with Don Tommaso and Drago, and they've come back because one of the inconsistencies here is a criticism to the story of Tinny Howard's story, is that Black Mask was humiliated, he was shunned, he was made a fool of, he lost his mask, and all the other four members of the crime family sort of rejected him, and now suddenly two don't, and they're welcoming him back into the fold. And Finbar Sullivan and Iko Hasagara are sort of they've sort of been excluded from these other three crime families that are talking with Black Mask, trying to manipulate it so that they will finally be able to kill Catwoman. It's kind of a tired plot point at this point, and this entire issue is really just involves Selena wanting to get out of the city. And so all they do is they manipulate a falling out between her and Iko, where basically Iko and Catwoman, they do a very public spectacle, witnessed by Black Mask, Don Tommaso, and Drago, where she's like, where Iko rejects her and seemingly kills Catwoman by blowing up her own yacht. Iko blows up her own yacht and deliberately orchestrates things in league with Selena, saying, we got to manipulate events so it looks like we're rejecting. We have to end our relationship and be public about it in order so I can continue to be a mobster and you can continue to, go about your business. And that's really what happens here. There's for people that are big fans of Catwoman's bisexuality, her relationship with Iko here is explored. Iko is still attracted to Selena. She's very clearly open to having a relationship with Selena here. You can read between the lines of their dialogue that Iko still finds Selena attractive, and Selena still finds her attractive. But Selena is detached. She's detached from Valmont. She's detached from Iko. She's detached from Bruce Wayne. Clearly, Selena is not open to any kind of relationship right now. I actually like Teeny Howard's exploration of that. That she's sort of I think properly portraying Selena right now is not really wanting any kind of relationship. Selena is kind of a mess right now, coming off of a failed relationship, no wedding with Bruce Wayne, Batman, all that, not all that craziness, and so she's not in the right place to have any kind of relationship. And so for her just wanting to leave and essentially go overseas with Valmont, I think that's in keeping with the character. Her relationship with Valmont continues to be undefined or complicated, not sexual, at least not yet, as far as we can see. And but again, I'm not so. I'm not really sure. There's not much of a story here, other than that Black Mask is once again made a fool of, and Eco's integrity as a mobster is maintained, and Catwoman basically takes off with Valmont out of the country, and then next issue, I guess we'll see what happens. That's sort of how it ends. So that sort of ends this arc, and we'll have presumably a brand new story next issue with Selena, with Valmont, working with Valmont doing something. So, um, nothing that really blew me away, but I think a necessary ending so that we could justify Eco finding a way back into the fold, so that her crime family would have some integrity. And so all this did was sort of reset the pieces on the underworld of the Gotham City chessboard, so to speak. But and the art was okay. I didn't mind the art, but what do you think?
Yeah, I thought the art was really great, actually. Some of the best art we've had from Sami Basri in the series so far, especially getting a chance to see Catwoman in what's my favorite costume of hers, the old school purple. Well, maybe it's not my favorite. I like the purple one where she actually has a skirt, probably the best. But this is a little
Yeah.
throwback to '90s with the purple Jim Ballant, if everybody remembers him. Um,
Mm.
but yeah, it is interesting. I mean, in terms of her leaving town, she talks about needing a vacation, but in terms of where they're going to go, what they're going to do with Valmont, it's like, well, Valmont's the person I know that can get me out of town, has lots of resources, but when he says, well, where do you want to go to relax? And she's more like, well, I don't necessarily want to go somewhere to relax. I want to go and do what I do best, which I'm a thief. So yeah, we're probably going to get some cool heist story from Tini Howard. I'm looking forward to that. And then I do love how that's playing into sort of the history that Catwoman has had with Eco, over the years. I haven't read those stories, so I'm not that familiar with it. But we do get a callback to a previous volume of Catwoman where apparently Eco has filled in for Catwoman before, has actually put on the costume, and she does that at the end of this issue as well. So again, I love the fact that um, Selena knows she needs to take herself off the table, as it were. Sets up this situation where it appears that Eco has turned against her, blows her up on the boat, but then Eco's going to be, taking her place in the costume while Selena's off, robbing or stealing or doing whatever. So I think that all plays out really, really well. It fits the narrative of what Tini Howard's been doing really, really well. If I have any criticism of the series, I still feel like the pacing is a little off. Um, and I just especially feel like those Harley Quinn Catwoman issues were really out of place in tone. But I like what Tini Howard is doing here. It definitely feels crime noir, and it feels very different from what came before. And we talked about that when Ram V was leaving the book. We didn't know what to expect, and how hard it was going to be to follow him. And I like that Tini is going in a completely different direction. Talk so often when Ram was writing the book about how it felt very flashy and in a Michael Mann crime story kind of way. This is much more street, much more urban, um, you know, kind of in your face with the mob, with these actual mob characters um, as supporting characters, whether it's Don Tomasi or Dragos or Black Mask himself. Uh, it's much more, as I said, street. So I'm enjoying it. I'm enjoying it. All right, up next we have DC versus Vampires All Out War #2. I kind of referenced this one a little bit earlier. That we get a couple pages or cameo of Shazam, Billy Batson right at the end. It's written by Alex Packnadel and Matthew Rosenberg. The art is by Pasquale Colano. Tones are by Nicola, I think it's Righi. It's Righi. Apologies if I'm mispronouncing that. And the letters are by Troy Petrie. So much like the first issue of this series, it's black and white with some red tones, I guess we'll say. It's how DC is describing it. Um, this is really showing that the end of days against these vampires here, as we saw the heroes' headquarters be destroyed last issue, and we get a great recap from John Constantine. Um, and then at the end, we, like I said, we see Billy Batson show up, and somebody named the Baron, who kind of has him prisoner, and is using Billy's gift of foresight, which he's had at various times. And this guy's in Florida, apparently. Um, so I
Do you know
don't
who that
know.
is? Who's
No, I
with Billy
don't.
Batson?
I
Yeah,
don't. The armor kind of looks like Luther's armor
it
in a
does.
way.
And I thought, but Luther's dead, so it can't be him.
Yeah,
So I don't know who that is. So yeah,
yeah.
I
I didn't. Yeah, I didn't either. And again, Billy refers to him as the Baron. So I don't know. But what I do know is I even though this DC versus Vampires All Out War story kind of skips ahead, and granted, the regular DC versus Vampires series has certainly covered a widespread period of time, but this feels like at least a year or so in the future from when that series started out. Because yeah, there's not much left. You got Booster Gold, you got Constantine, you got Deadman, Mary Marvel, Deathstroke, and Azrael. Basically, that's about all you have left. Um, and their plan going up against Wonder Woman, trying to recruit the help of Talia al Ghul. It all plays really, really well. It comes across as it makes sense. I can understand why they're doing what they're doing. Are there gaps in the story between what we've had in the regular DC versus Vampire series and this series? Yeah, there are gaps. Not everything has been explained. A lot of stuff is glossed over in a period of a panel or two, but that's okay because this feels like the kind of the final chapter. They're up against the wall. They're back. The heroes are backed into a corner, and doesn't need to all play out and make sense. Well, sort of yes and no, right? Like if we take this for being face value of what's going on, then don't we know in the regular DC Vampire series that what they're trying right now with getting Supergirl to Australia, because that might be the one place she can, get sunlight and gain her powers back. Don't we know that fails if they, if we jump forward a year and this is what's going on? Um, but I guess they just expect us not to think about that too much. Like I'm not sure, but putting those kind of continuity issues aside, just read this for what it is on its own as a standalone in this DC versus vampire setting. It works really, really well because the stakes are really high. The characterizations of these characters may not be what we're used to, but you sort of expect that, right? Like, this Booster Gold, he's much thinner and kind of emaciated and, kind of ragtag. So wouldn't you expect him to be, a little bit of a different characterization in terms of just being worn down? Um, Constantine is Constantine. At least that characterization remains the same. And Deathstroke, kind of similar as well. Obviously, when you talk about Wonder Woman or Talia or Nightwing, it's going to be different based on the fact that they're vampires now or they're just in a completely different place. So I feel like it works pretty well. The other thing, and I didn't mention, is there is a backup called Dark Birth, and we get the first part here. It's by Emma Vicelli. Art is by Hanning. Letters are by Troy Petrie. And my understanding, especially based on that title, Dark Birth, is that we're going to see how this is the story of how Dick Grayson, Nightwing, became the Lord of the Vampires. So I don't know if that's necessary, but I guess, it's only the first part and it's sort of set up. So we'll see how that plays out as well. Although I did think the art was particularly strong there. But what are your thoughts on these two stories?
well, first I never I missed reviewing the first issue of this, and I'm still the jury is still out for me. Although I'm leaning toward really not liking the whole black and white and red. I Although this backup with Dark Birth, Nightwing's sort of his origin of how he was turned to be essentially the one of the kings of the vampires. the art is really, it looks pretty damn good there. And yeah, so it's I'm actually curious. I'm actually curious to know how this is going to look in the comic book, because digitally it looks good, but some of this stuff when you print it on a comic book page, it's faded. It doesn't look as good on the page. So I'm really curious to see how this is going to look in a comic as opposed to how we're seeing it digitally here. Because I noticed, I know that Dan Didio, interestingly enough, for Frank Miller Presents, he in his talk at San Diego, he stated specifically that they're printing comics and they're not releasing them digitally at all. They're only going to be in comic book form, and they're going to be. And he mentioned specifically that a lot of the techniques that apparently Frank Miller and his other artists are using, they think look better with just on comics and not a digital representation. So it's just an interesting aside there. But in any event, I actually like the story. This story is like an absolute adrenaline rush, and the main story itself. I mean, basically, the heroes need sunlight. They need heroes. They need sunlight for humans, and they want to find. With Talia's help, they want to find out where all the Lazarus pits are, and they also want to get a hold of Weather Wizard, who's turned into a vampire. Weather Wizard is a vampire, but he has the ability to channel sunlight in order to grow algae to keep humans alive. And uh, Dead Man is in league with Constantine. He's helping Constantine out. There's a lot of characters here in black and white. I'd be lying if I said that I was able to identify all of them. Sometimes the art I think was a little bit unclear, a little wonky, but I will give credit here. There's a very creative use of the color red. But honestly, sometimes I feel like they're just coloring this particular piece red because they need it to stand out more, not because it's actually red. And so it seems like sort of an odd. I mean, I get it. It's interesting. It's this. They're experimenting. They're thinking outside the box a little bit. Uh, again, it's again, we'll have to see. I get this. There's action. There's action here. There's humor here. There is fun to be had in this issue. Lots of characters. Slade talks to Jason Todd. Jimmy gets hit by Wonder Woman. Mary Marvel attacks Wonder Woman. Slade versus Wonder Woman. We get Booster Gold. We get decapitations. We get Deadman possessing Booster Gold. We get who is holding, as you said, Billy Batson. Who's controlling Billy Batson? Is it like King of the Vampires? Who is that guy? We don't really know. So there's this is actually fairly interesting. I really wish though that this was. I kind of wish that this was colored like normally, but then I don't know. I'd really like to see how this would look just with standard colors. To be honest with you, but I don't. I am intrigued. I'm not turned off by it. It's like, you know, I always get this feeling that DC's trying to slowly turn me into manga because they want to get lazier and lazier and lazier, and they keep eliminating the colors, and eventually they're all going to be black and white, and so they're just sort of weaning us off the colors now. But
Well,
anyway,
we've both talked about, whether it was Superman red and blue or Wonder Woman black and gold, Batman black and white, how we were getting really tired of the limited color palette kind of thing.
yeah,
And yeah, I don't necessarily think they're trying to push us to manga, but I mean, they're not paying a colorist for Future State Gotham.
yeah,
That's more money in their pocket. So
yeah.
anyway, all right. Up next, Harley Quinn in space. This is Task Force XX Chapter 3, written by Stephanie Phillips. The art is by Georges Duarte and Simone Bionfontini or Fontino. Romulo Fajardo Jr. does the colors and world design on letters. What do you think of this one?
I've been enjoying the variant covers more than, and I'm not really a variant cover fan, but I've actually enjoyed the variant covers more than I've actually enjoyed the story itself. But the story itself isn't bad. This is a Suicide Squad story. That's what it feels like to me. This is Harley Quinn in space, and we got some pretty cool variant covers, and we got. I like the use of Jace Fox. I think it's a creative use of, pardon me, not Jace Fox, but Luke Fox, the former Bat. What was he? Bat Boy? Who was Luke Fox?
Batwing.
Batwing,
Batwing.
sorry. Batwing. Oh, is that Batwing? Is that the name of former Luke Fox character? Or is that like the name of Nightwing's dog? I'm not sure, but anyways,
No, that's Bite Wing,
oh,
not Bat.
Bitewing, right?
Yeah,
That's,
keep
yeah,
it straight, man.
yeah, man. I would fail like a test for beginners here for the DC universe. Good grief! But in any event, I didn't. I actually just I found myself essentially skim reading this, and I don't really know why. It feels. I don't feel like anything's at stake on this, and I wish this was. I wish it was a little bit funnier. I like the art better. I like the art better than Riley Rousmo's art. I uh, the in fact, some of the pages really pop off the page. I really like the art on some of these pages, and it makes me. I actually think I would have a better appreciation of maybe the actual initial stories that Stephanie Phillips told to begin with had this artist been used or a different style than Roswell, and but I'm not this feels like chaos, and I suppose it should because it's a Harley story. It feels like chaos. It feels wonky. This feels like a really watered down version of the Suicide Squad, except Luke Fox is really nice, and he's got a lot of money. He's willing to share it with these criminals that he's who he goes to for help out of desperation because the Justice League is dead and the Teen Titans are in total chaos given the events of Dark Crisis issue 2 and 3. So. Um, it's there's fun to be had here. It comes out weekly. We know I have read to the end, and I just it's all right. It's all right. It's neither spectacular. It's neither terrible. It's right middle of the road for me, and the art's a lot of fun, and I love the covers, and so I mean I'm getting every issue. So you know, as a Harley fan, I think this is if you're a Harley fan, then you're used to different types of stories. This is Harley in space. This doesn't happen very often, so it was an easy thing for me. I can only think of a handful of other times that Harley's been in space in her own. I think this is the first time she's been in space in her own comic, but I might be wrong on that. But anyways, what do you think?
Yeah, so I like the Harley aspect of it and the Task Force XX aspect of it. I do feel like while I like seeing Luke Fox and it's nice that somebody's actually using him, because originally the rumor was he was going to be the next Batman, and then it turned out to be Tim Fox, who's now going by Jace Fox. But anyway, it's nice to see Luke being used. A little bit of a cliche though, with this idea of this element X that Luke Fox had been experimenting with, and fired it off, and then and Stephanie Phillips herself kind of mentions it in terms of referencing Frankenstein's monster through the voice of Harley Quinn. But you could look at um, Hank Pym creating Ultron, or Ultron then creating Vision, Tony Stark with his various AIs he's created over the years that then become malevolent. And so at the end of this issue, when we get the Solomon Grundy Element X infected Solomon Grundy showing up and saying to Luke Fox, "Hello, Father," or what have you, it felt a little uh, tropey. Um, so that's not my favorite. This hasn't been my favorite issue of the run. I really enjoyed last issue. The first issue and last issue I enjoyed more, especially last issue, because it paid homage with a lot of the one-liners and quips and Easter eggs to so many of those great, science fiction / horror movies that we've had over the past 20 years. This one, we don't actually get a lot of Harley. It's more about Luke Fox and this Element X. But I will give Stephanie Phillips a lot of credit for being really consistent with the level of danger and tension that Harley and the rest of Task Force XX are in. We've talked in I think when we reviewed the previous issue about, the death of Harley Quinn storyline that's coming up and how likely it's going to have something to do with the fact that, yeah, she's in space, and no easier way to kill her than when she's in space.
Yeah.
Plus, at the end of the day, it has Killer Frost in it, and I'm a big Killer Frost fan. So I
Yeah,
am
it seems a little bit
enjoying.
odd that Verdict, having just tried to kill Harley, that Luke Fox would think would be a good idea to have Verdict also be part of the team. But little things like that. But that's okay. You got to have a little bit of drama.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, this is a fun team to put together, and clearly, Stephanie Phillips isn't afraid to pull the trigger. The body count will end up being high, and you can just point to Bolt being killed, in the first issue.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and you kind of think, okay, well, so he's going to survive in some way, right? Nope, nope, he's not. So, and he seemed like he was going to be, a big part of the story, and then he's just gone. So, I expect the rest of them, Lashina, Killer Frost, although I'd hate to see, her go, although she may be the one that survives just based on the fact that she can absorb life force. Bronze Tiger, Solomon Grundy's already dead. Verdict, if she does get killed, you don't feel bad because she kind of deserves it based on what she did to Harley. So in the end, I'll be curious how this gets resolved in terms of the Element X part of the story, because I expect Task Force XX not to survive. So we'll have to see how that all plays out. So all right. Up next, we have Nightwing number 95, written by Tom Taylor. Bruno Redondo is the artist. Caio Felipe does the inks for pages 13 through 17 and 19 through 21. Adriana Lucas is on colors. Wes Abbott is on letters. This was a heck of a lot of fun. Maybe my favorite issue of the series so far since the very first issue, which was just so emotional. This one I enjoyed for different reasons. Part of that being just the ruthlessness of Blockbuster, which Tom Taylor really gets across in this issue. We know that the former commissioner, um, McLean, is being, he was captured trying to run away from Bloodhaven, trying to escape last issue. Now, in this issue, we see him in the Bloodhaven police station. He's being interrogated by a couple of cops. He mentions that he's not going to do any time. He's going to get off scot-free because he has all of this information on Blockbuster, and he's going to be willing to turn it over for full immunity. And no sooner does he say that than one of these cops pulls out a gun and shoots him, because these cops are corrupt and they actually work for Blockbuster. And he has had it. He's fed up. He's not going to take it anymore. But Nightwing is sort of feeling the same way. He knows that he wants to make Bloodhaven a better place, a safer place. He knows he doesn't necessarily have the ability to trust anybody other than Maggie Sawyer, who's just come in to be the police commissioner from outside, hired by Melinda Zuko, who is supposedly, we still don't, haven't had any proof, but is supposedly Nightwing's sister. So everything is sort of coming to a head. And I know in the past, Rocky, you've talked about this series moving at somewhat of a snail's pace.
Yeah.
Can't disagree with you there, especially when we look at things like the Heartless is his name, or Heartless Killer, who shows up and then disappears and then shows back up. We still know next to nothing about him. And here we are, almost like 15 issues in to
Yeah,
I think
it's yeah, 80. Yeah, I think you're right. About 15
80,
issues in. Yeah.
82. Yeah,
Yeah.
13 issues in. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's been over a year. So I get what you're saying, but this one does have a lot of action, and of course the Bruno Redondo art is as fantastic as ever. I love that Dick Grayson shows how much he cares about the city of Bloodhaven by finally doing what you sort of expect people to do, right? Like, how many times have we talked about, well, if Batman really wants to clean up Gotham, why doesn't he just get all the really powerful superheroes in there and just go to town and actually clean it up? That's what Robin does here, or Nightwing does here. He recruits, some really powerful members, that other heroes that can help him out, and they simultaneously. And I'm talking Donna Troy, Cyborg, Changeling, Wally West, Flash, Batwoman. So they can take out four different crimes that are all happening at the same time, and finally have the proof they need to take down Blockbuster and to show him that he doesn't own Bloodhaven. And in response to that, he Blockbuster attacks Haven, kind of the neighborhood um, that Dick Grayson has used part of the money that Alfred left him to create a foundation to make a safe place for people. Blockbuster goes there, pulls no punches, threatens children, gets the upper hand on Nightwing, gets him to lay down, and then attacks him. And when he does, he knocks his mask off and sees that Nightwing and Dick Grayson are one and the same. and then the blurb for next issue is Secrets No More. So based on the ruthlessness of Blockbuster, based on what we've seen before, and I'm not always the biggest fan of revealing secret identities to super villains. And basically, it's because I feel like, in a way, you can get a good story out of it. Don't get me wrong, and it definitely raises the stakes and um, shows there's consequences to these actions. But it's also limiting in a way because once they know that secret, it can never be put back. Now that's not always true. We've seen Daredevil find a way to do it. Spider-Man's found a way to do it in the past, and um, but each time you do that, then it's harder to undo the next time. So I like the impact. I like the moment. Um, but so how do you stop Blockbuster from, first of all, using that knowledge to get the upper hand against Nightwing? How do you stop him? Even if you stop Blockbuster, how do you stop him from, spreading that knowledge around? So yeah, it in a way it opens up new stories and it's very impactful. But another way, it's kind of limiting. But if anybody can find out a way to make it work, it's Tom Taylor. And I got to say, like, when I got to this moment, when I got to the end of this issue and I saw what happened, I just had a big grin on my face. It's like, holy shit. Like, this is a big deal. This is a big, impactful moment. Um, and it's this kind of thing, this kind of reaction, this kind of emotion that this sort of a story beat engenders is the reason that I read comics. It's just it was such a cool moment. And we know that Blockbuster's not going to win in the end, especially because it's a Tom Taylor book, and in Tom Taylor books, for the most part, if you set aside Deceased, and even in that one, when you really get down to it, the good guys win. That's what's great about Tom Taylor books. They're ultimately hopeful and optimistic. So Dick Grayson's going to prevail, but how is he going to do it? Especially now that Blockbuster knows his secret identity. Yeah, this was a fantastic issue. Really, really enjoyed it. What'd you think?
Well, I think that in one of Tom Taylor's traits is that he's not particularly great at sophisticated plots, and there are so many plot contrivances here that conveniently come into place and wrap things up so conveniently that it actually stretches credulity. But as we have said before, as I've said before, he's so good, and maybe it's because of Bruno Redondo's art. He's so good at sort of focusing more on the character that you kind of forgive that the conveniences of his plot, because so many things fall into place here. Melinda Zuko is rescued by at the beginning. She's rescued by Dick Grayson, or and then uh, Oracle has all the evidence. Melinda Zuko has all the evidence. She works. Maggie Sawyer happens to be there. Uh, Oracle happens to have a list name of all the corrupt cops and gives the list to Maggie Sawyer, so they know who all the corrupt cops are. Uh, uh, Former Commissioner McLean is conveniently killed, so he's off the playing field. Everything is good. Everything's going to be wrapped up with a nice little bow, and it's clear that Blockbuster is down. That this thing is, all the corruption in Bloodhaven seems to be gone. We're heading toward a happy ending. But then Blockbuster does something absolutely insane. He goes and attacks New Haven, he's threatening to kill the lives of children, and of course Nightwing shows up and willingly lays down his batons and allows himself to be slammed by Blockbuster. And so that actually all worked, but it was very convenient, and there was nothing sophisticated by this plot whatsoever throughout the run. However, it's the art's so damn good. We got so many great character moments. We're probably headed toward a wedding for Babs and Nightwing. I'm sitting here and I'm thinking, you know what? I don't really care. I'm kind of glad. This is it's very convenient on the plot. I think that's a legitimate criticism, but I'm enjoying it. Also, you made a very good observation about, what is Blockbuster going to do now? I thought Bruno Redondo, I think, is very deliberately look at the expression on Blockbuster's face when he realizes that Nightwing is Dick Grayson. It's very convenient. He looks down and then he looks almost angry because I'm thinking that Blockbuster knows that he can't kill him. Blockbuster has to be thinking to himself, he was warned by Lady Shiva. Like, you don't take this guy down. he couldn't find a hitman to take out Nightwing because even Lady Shiva, arguably the greatest martial artist, one-time assassin in the world, wasn't going to go near him. So Blockbuster has to be thinking, my God, I just had half what remains of the Justice League, well, whatever, the Justice League and Teen Titans, take out my criminal network in Bloodhaven, and they're obviously friends with Nightwing. And what happens if I kill this guy? What happens if I kill Dick Grayson? And not only is Nightwing favored, but Dick Grayson is the philanthropist, the number one philanthropist in Bloodhaven, who donated $1 billion to the haven that I just destroyed. I mean, Blockbuster has to be thinking. I mean, I know Blockbuster is kind of he can go insane, but he's still a criminal mastermind. So he's got to collect himself and think about what he's doing here, because the worst play that he can do, he's got to start thinking like Kingpin. And I'm thinking to myself, Tom Taylor wants to make Blockbuster in. He wants Blockbuster to be, the Kingpin to the Daredevil of Nightwing. And so that's what I'm most fascinated about, is what is Blockbuster going to do now? Because quite frankly, this was actually a brilliant Blockbuster did this to himself, because I can't see him killing Nightwing. I can't see him doing it. That would be the worst play for him right now. He'd have nothing but a target on his back for the rest of his life, with every hero of the DC universe on his ass. But anyways,
Oh yeah, 100%. Plus, like you said, Shiva's message to him that you can't kill Nightwing. So I noticed that that expression as well of anger, and I took that to be, oh, all of a sudden the two people that he hates the most, he finds out are the exact same person, and he's just filled with anger. But I didn't even think about the whole Shiva aspect, and yeah, what does he do? So yeah, very, very much looking forward to the next issue. We'll have to see how that plays out. And yeah, Bruno Redondo art, spectacular as always. Okay, up next we have The Flash, number 785. This is written by Jeremy Adams. Art is by Amin K. Nwelepan. Jeremy Cox does the colors, Rob Lee on letters. This is The Search for Barry Allen, part 3. Once again, we'll be singing the praises of Jeremy Adams and how fantastic he writes this book. But you go first. What'd you think?
I mean, I had a lot of fun with this issue. You know what? I've got, as a quick side note, well, number one, I love Jeremy Adams, and I really enjoyed this issue. And I'm even starting to be more hopeful for Tim Sheridan, because the more I hear about Tim Sheridan, he's been telling some stories on Twitter about how he didn't have much choice. He had to use Red X, and he didn't have a lot of control over the storyline in Teen Titans Academy, and he never felt particularly comfortable with it. And so Tim Sheridan and Jeremy Adams are doing such a good job collaborating on Flashpoint Beyond with Jeff Johns. I mean, I'm hoping that, we're all paying dividends here. Uh, that's a slight digression. Jeremy Adams here in The Flash does a nice job. Ultimately, this issue ties in. This culminates with Barry Allen. They find Barry Allen, and ultimately this issue ends with Barry Allen, you know, being rescued by Wally West and Linda, in just a great sequence of events, where ultimately Barry says, "Look, they tell Barry what happened to the members of the Justice League. Barry basically tells him, if the Justice League died like that, then it sounds like they went through what I went through. So I can tell you, Wally, that the Justice League are not dead. They're trapped in a world much like the one I'm on." And of course, that's exactly what they are. In the last few issues, Jay and Irie have been on this sort of like Mad Max world with a Mad Max kind of Barry Allen and having an adventure there. And meanwhile, we have Wally West and Wallace basically trying to snap Barry Allen out of it, to get him to, because Barry Allen is living in his dream world, but he thinks Wally West is Reverse Flash. And you know, there's so many great character moments here. There's my favorite moments are with Jay and Irie, but also there's really great moments with Linda, because she's got speed powers too, and I love her. We have so many speedsters in this comic, and it's almost like in under the hands of a different writer, you could probably be a little bit worried that, well, wait a minute, don't give everybody speed powers. I mean, are you handing out Speed Force like candy here? Come on, but it works. Linda getting powers, going after her kids. Her relationship with Wally underscores the power of this narrative. The relationship with their kids. Jay and Irie taking up the Night Flash, taking on the Night Flash, and this new character, Knives Maroney, who ultimately finds one of the bracelets that the children that Jay and Irie lose. So we can probably expect to see Knives Maroney, who's the bad guy in the Night Flash universe, showing up in our universe in the mainstream DC universe at some point. There's a lot of very interesting things that happened here, and this is I consider this is a genuine Dark Crisis tie-in. I mean, frankly, World Without a Justice League, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and Dark Crisis, Young Justice, they don't feel like tie-ins to me, really. Not really. This feels like a genuine tie-in because you need a Flash. Every crisis needs a Flash. And this one ends with Barry Allen finally getting his head in the game, and he's going to go and he's going to rescue the members of the Justice League who are trapped in those worlds, those dream worlds that are pariahs manipulating. And I love this, and there's just great moments here too with Jesse Quick and oh, I forgive me, I forget the other.
Max Mercury.
Thank you, Max Mercury, in sort of the Mad Max universe as I've been calling it because I black whatever it might be called, but it's a lot of fun. The visuals here are fantastic. Amanke Nahulapan and on the art, and Jeremy Cox on the colors. Colors are fantastic. When when I'm looking at a page here, and whenever you see Barry Allen and Wally West beside each other, I mean, you got to do the shading just right on them as characters because they're both red, but they got slightly different lightnings. You got slightly those variations are absolutely crucial, and you got to be a very good artist to pull it off and not feel like it's just a bunch of red ink on a page, and he does it to great effect. I This is enjoyable, and this inspires hope because I mean this comic book ends with Wally West saying we're going to save the world. And you know what? Coming out of Wally West's mouth, I believe it coming out of his mouth pretty much more than any other character in the DC universe, with the possible exception of Kal-El Superman. So I'm I love this. This was the way I wanted. This is how I wanted this to end, and I'm looking forward. This gets me more excited for Dark Crisis. This gets me more excited for Barry Allen kicking ass. And I'm a Wally West fan, but I'm cheering for Barry Allen at the end of this too to get into Dark Crisis because I'm looking forward to Dark Crisis number 4. uh, and anyways, this put a smile on my face. And once again, kudos to Jeremy Adams and the whole creative team here, Amankin Nehupan and Jeremy Cox for putting out a fun issue.
Yeah, I agree. The art by Noella Pan is fantastic. We talked about it previously, especially when you talk about the world, this idealized world that Barry Allen is trapped in, because it has a little, color dots like old school printing, and so he does a good job of that. I think the design for the Night Flash is, it's kind of this cross between Batman and Barry Allen Flash. I think that design is great. The design of the Mad Max Barry Allen also done really really well. So I can't say enough about the art. And you're right. It's a very fast paced story. So we're getting panels that are probably a little smaller than we have gotten by Noella Pan in the past. That's okay. He does a good job with that restriction. There's still plenty of detail, even though the panels are a bit smaller. So probably a bit smaller than even he would like, but he does a fantastic job. And there are some double page spreads with unique panel layout, lightning as the borders between the panels. Those all work really really well also. So I can't say enough good things about the art, and the color really helps it shine as well. You mentioned a lot of red in the issue, but it never gets muddy. Everything's always really really clear, whether it's the lightning or the Speed Force lines or what have you. So visually, a very very good issue. In terms of story, I don't have a lot to add to what you said, other than Jeremy Adams continues to impress me. There are a lot of characters in this book, a lot, and they all. It doesn't feel overcrowded. It doesn't feel like it moves too slow. It's paced very, very well.
Yes.
I'm just continually impressed with Jeremy Adams and how he rises to these challenges. We've talked a lot in the past about titles having to tie into an event, or how it can disrupt the flow of what the writer is trying to do and tell their own story. It's always been a very seamless um, story when Adams has had to tie in with other things, whether it be the War for Earth 3, or in this case, Dark Crisis. So again, just really, really impressed. The other thing that I'll kind of reiterate that you said, the character moments, specifically for me, the character moments with Linda, because I agree with you in terms of, man, everybody has the Speed Force, and I admit, even myself, when we first found out that Linda Park had speed powers, I was a little ambivalent about it. I'm like, okay, it makes sense, I guess, when you think about it, because she's around the Speed Force all the time. Why would she be the only one in that family to actually not have speed powers? That wouldn't make sense, I guess, if you stop to think about it. But do we really need another, uh, you know, character with speed abilities in this book? Um, but based on the great character moments and interactions between Mr. Terrific and Linda, where she says at the beginning, well, I love that you think you have a choice. Like, these are my kids. I'm going after them. And anybody who has kids, will identify with that. Not only she's my husband and my kids are out there. You're a smart man. You're not going to stop me. And Mr. Terrific's like, yeah, you're right. Um, I still am looking forward to the moment where Wally has to have that conversation with Linda. It's clear, toward the end of the story, when he looks over and he sees her running, she runs past him and kind of pats him on the butt. It's a great, moment. Wally, the expression on Wally's face is like, wait a second, how is she running this fast? So we haven't had that conversation. We haven't had that character moment or interaction yet. So I'm still looking forward to that. But it was a great nod here to do the, slap on the butt, and she winks at him and he gets this big grin on his face. Um, it was that moment that put me at ease. I stopped having those reservations. Like, do we really need another, like, do we really have to give Linda Park speed powers? But just based on how fun this was, and seeing Wally's reaction to it, like, well, yeah, this is going to be great. Like, I look forward to some stories that are fun and hopeful and bright. And Jeremy Adams, when he was on our show last, talked about that. That's what he wants the Flash title to be: really fun for all ages, and really accessible. And that's what this can be. It can be Wally and Linda and Jay and Irie all going out having adventures together, and be a fun, adventuresome book, like kind of like the Fantastic Four. But in this case, they actually are family, even more so than the Fantastic Four are. So that moment really put me at ease, and I'm totally on board with Linda Park having powers now. And so, yeah, if I have any complaint or nitpick, it's that we haven't been able to see that conversation, and every time Linda's has tried to have that conversation, something always interrupts. But I'm kind of okay with that, because it gave us this moment. But I am looking forward to anticipating Wally and Linda having that conversation. And you almost wonder if Wally's going to take her aside. I did appreciate the moment at the end with Wally saying, "Yeah, we're going to go save the world. But hey, maybe you want to go talk to your wife for 30 seconds and have that conversation real quick." Like, what the hell? How do you have such speed powers? Just because I know that Jeremy Adams is going to nail that moment. So look forward to that.
Yeah.
All right. Just a couple books left. Up next, we have a milestone title. It's Duo. It's written by Greg Pak. Pencils are by Koi Pham. Inks by Scott Hanna. Chris Sotomayor does the colors. Janice Chiang on letters. It's issue number 4. We learned about the Immutables, who last issue, who are these immortals who were trying to recruit David and Maya, or I'm sorry, David and what's his wife's name? Maya's the detective.
Kelly. His wife's name's Kelly.
Kelly. That's right. Kelly. Yeah. Kelly. That's right. So we know they're trying to recruit David and the nanobots that have infected his body. First, they were thinking that they needed to take him out. Then, the leader of the Immutables, like, no, he can actually help us. And then we found out that there's this other faction, if you will, who sort of enemies to the Immutables, called Tinker Technologies, and they're the ones that attacked the Immutables last issue. and we find out a lot more about them in this particular issue, and the person that runs the company, Dr. Emerus Tinker, and he seems to be formidable, and he doesn't come across as this mustache twirling bad guy. Um, and a lot of the things he's saying in terms of what he wants, he's like David. He's trying to recruit David. He knows Kelly's trapped in there as well. He's saying, "Yeah, I want to help you. I want to do the things that you were trying to do. Solve um, diseases and famine and those kind of things." But Kelly especially doesn't trust him, and this is the company that tried to buy out the company that David and Kelly were working for to begin with. So there's very much a political aspect of the book, a lot of moving parts. We have these immortal immutables. We have the sort of technology faction that is Tinker Technologies, and we have David with his wife's brain. Maybe it's only her brain panels, brain patterns. Maybe it is her consciousness. That is something that Tinker brings up to David. Hey, if her physical brain was destroyed, can that really be her inside? So he's definitely manipulating. He's trying to get what he wants. Like any good CEO will, or any good zealot for that matter, who completely believes 100% in his cause. So again, a lot of political aspect to the book, a lot of action in this one as well. And I don't think, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think Greg Pak is writing a lot of comics right now, but man, I've been a fan of his for a long time, whether it's his more creator-owned independent stuff like Kingsway West at Dark Horse, or his awesome Hulk run.
Well, he did Atlas. He worked. I think he created a lot of the Atlas characters at Marvel, didn't he? Those alien
Yeah, yeah,
characters. Yeah.
yeah, he did. But I don't. I mean, when I follow him on Twitter, he talks a lot about how he's writing a cookbook right now. But anyway, I say that to say I'm glad that we're getting something from him.
Yeah.
I'm glad it's this story. This is I didn't necessarily have expectations for this. We've talked before about how this isn't one of these new milestone properties that's a derivative of something from the past, like Static or Icon and Hardware, Icon and Rocket, or Hardware, even Blood Syndicate. There was a previous series. Like, this is wholly new. There's no version of Duo in the first go round, in the first iteration of Milestone. But I'm glad we have it here because, again, I didn't have expectations because there's nothing necessarily to base it on. But this is it's just so well done. It's exceeding. It's surprising me how good it is. If I didn't have expectations, but if I had, this probably would be exceeding them because it's so good. And the Koi Fam art it's a little stylized, but it really really works. And I especially like the way he sets up his action. There's not a lot of detail in the panels when he's showing these fights, and it really helps the characters pop off the page. Like, typically, I'm not a big fan of that. Like, I'd like more detail in the background, but for some reason, his style works better, I think, when the backgrounds are minimized. So I'm really enjoying this, and I hope that it's selling well enough that we're going to get another volume because it's been fantastic so far. What are your thoughts?
First, I want to say that if you actually, having bought the physical copies of the first three issues so far, there's something about I just love the quality of them. These are gorgeous looking comic books, and this is this fourth one. I haven't got picked up this copy yet, but it looks to be gorgeous, and so I just uh, and it's a bonus, quite frankly, that the story is pretty damn good too. And no one's talking about this. No one seems to be talking about this series or reviewing it, and I think it's unfortunate because it deserves some attention. I think because I think it's interesting, and Greg Pak's done a really good job here of showing there's a conflict between husband and wife, between David and his wife Kim. It's basically David's body, and Kim's consciousness is within his body, which is filled with nanites, and they are they've become essentially extremely powerful, super powerful. They can pretty much do anything with the nanites that make up their physical essence. And these immutables, which are essentially a group of immortals, they're the only ones on Earth who are immortal. And then all of a sudden, this human becomes immortal with these nanites, just like them. And so this Marius character, who's runs the Immutables, they want to control David and Kim. They want to control Duo. Meanwhile, you got this Dr. Emerus Tinker of Tinker Technologies. He's a human that wants to create immortality for humans to cure everything, but of course he's got a nefarious agenda as well. And so there's a very interesting philosophical dilemma here that I love the theme. I like that underscores this narrative. What do you choose? Who do you trust? Do you trust the Immutables that are telling you, look, we've been immortal, you don't want to have more people like us on the earth, and but maybe the Immutables have an agenda too, right? Because they want to keep their power, keep their uniqueness. They don't want humans to be like them. But then, can you really touch a corporate powerhouse? I mean, do we really trust Facebook or YouTube? Do we really trust Tinker Technologies that they're going to control this? And I love the ending here where you have essentially Kim taking over the body with her consciousness taking over the body, which normally David was mostly in control of, and she's being a little bit more kick-ass in terms of she's got a more of a hardline approach to dealing with this situation than her husband does, and so that dichotomy underscores the narrative as well, which makes it all the more interesting. And I'm not sure how many issues this is, but this is issue 4. But is this a 6-issue arc? I,
I mean, I made that assumption based on the fact that the other Milestone um, series were 6-issue arcs. But one thing that you notice is, whether it was Static or Icon and Rocket or Hardware or even Blood Syndicate's going on, it was always Static season 1.
yeah,
Hardware season 1. This doesn't say Duo season 1, so maybe it's just an ongoing and it's going to last as long as sales allow it to, and it doesn't necessarily have a cutoff. I don't know.
yeah. But no, either
So I
way,
guess
this is a I wish it was getting more attention, but I like that it's Earth M too. We have, I don't know what the hell's left of DC's multiverse, if there even exists anymore, but I like that. I like that Milestone. There's an Earth M just for the Milestone characters. It's good to see.
yeah, exactly. I agree. All right, on to the last book. Save the best for last, I suppose. Batman One Bad Day from writer Tom King. Mitch Gerads is the artist. Clayton Cowell on letters. Um, wow, that's all I have to say.
The best for
Uh,
last. But best for
yeah,
last. Would
yeah.
you
Go
agree with
ahead.
that? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
This
this.
is definitely my pick of the week, hands down. Nothing came close to this in my mind. But I'm
So I don't
biased.
know. I don't know that this is my pick of the week. I probably have to go bigger than that. This might be the best comic I've read all year. Um, like I talk about getting that big grin on my face at the end of Nightwing. I mean, I was kind of grinning the whole time while reading this.
Yeah.
And again, like we want to talk a little bit about expectations. We know that Mitch Gerads had talked, like it was under wraps for a while that this was the latest project him and Tom King were working on together. But if you ask Mitch what he was working on, he would say, I can't really say. But if you go back and listen, to interviews I've done over the years, whenever anybody asked me what my dream project would be, that's basically what I'm getting to work on right now. And, his dream project was a Batman title with Riddler as the villain, and so based on that and based on the track record that King has with Gerads, whether it was Mr. Miracle or Strange Adventures or their issues of Batman they did together, everything has been of the utmost quality, great storytelling, really good collaboration. So my expectations for this were really high, especially because I'm a fan of Mitch's work. I'm a fan of Tom's work. I love when they collaborate. Like, I had really high expectations. I expected this to be really good. That being said, this exceeded my expectations by so much because it's sort of it in a lot of ways. It's the story or the outcome or Batman makes decisions that you kind of have always wanted him to make, or at least a lot of us have, in the back of your mind, like, answer that question, like, why doesn't Batman just kill the Joker at some point? Like, there's got to be that point where he's just like, enough is enough. And, you and I were talking about this before we started recording, and it's like, okay, the title is One Bad Day. So what if Batman just snapped one day? He just had a bad. That's it. Enough with the revolving door of Gotham City or Blackgate, Gotham City Police Department or Blackgate or Arkham Asylum, whatever. Like I'm going for let's think about this logically. What's going to save the most lives? I think it's Immanuel Kant or Kant, the philosopher who talks about utilitarianism. What's the best? What achieves the most happiness? What's the best for the most people? Those are the decisions you should make. If Batman really stopped to think about it, how do you truly stop the Joker or the Riddler or the Penguin or whoever from killing people? Well, it's the final solution, right? Isn't that what the Nazis called it? The final solution. You kill them. You take them out. You kill one to save thousands or hundreds or whatever it is, right? And so, that's ultimately, and again, it's not 100%. It's not overt, but it seems to be what Batman finally chooses. But inspired by the Riddler himself, inspired by the fact that the Riddler, the whole idea of the story is that the Riddler is the smartest guy. He's even smarter than Batman. He's the smartest person. Forget Lex Luthor, forget Mr. Terrific, Michael Holt. The Riddler's the smartest person. And when he finally decides to stop playing games, because all along, the Riddler himself explains to Batman all along the reason he was doing this, hey, here's a clue on a giant typewriter or on a balloon or whatever, was for fun. He was having fun. He was toying with Batman. He's so far ahead of the game. He's been in Wayne Manor. He knew Batman was Bruce Wayne all along. He's been in Wayne Manor to watch Batman sleep, to watch Dick Grayson, to watch Jason Todd, to watch Tim Drake, to watch Damian. He's seen them all. He's done it all, and it's over. He's tired of messing around, and he doesn't want to play the game anymore. And he just wants to do whatever the hell he wants to do. And he's so smart and so far ahead of everybody that's literally what he can do, because he's so formidable and so dangerous. He's literally untouchable. Nobody can touch him. Not the Gotham City Police Department, not Batman, not other supervillains, not the crime families of Gotham. No, he literally walks out of Arkham Asylum, says, I'm going to go stay and live at this hotel. The banks of Gotham have this agreement that if he walks into a bank, just give him whatever he wants. He's that dangerous, even to the point when Gordon calls the governor to say, hey, I think I might need some help from the National Guard. I can't get any of my cops to even approach this guy or to even do surveillance on him or anything. The Riddler's so far ahead of everybody. The governor's like, my son's been missing for a week. He's been kidnapped, and hangs up on Gordon. That's how far ahead the Riddler is. So what choice does Batman have? It's maybe the one flaw that the Riddler shows here is that he's so far ahead. But Batman himself says it. He's like, so your mistake, like you changed, like you decided to stop having the fun. You just got tired of it and you just want to go out and live your life. You changed, but you made the assumption that I would never change, that there is a part of me, and Batman acknowledges it early on in the story. Like, yeah, there's a part of me that has mercy, but don't expect that part to always be there necessarily. But the Riddler believes that it will. The Riddler's like, you won't kill me. And that's his one mistake. And when at the end, when Batman, again, it's not overt, but it seems to be what happened. Batman makes that decision. It's just such a hell yeah moment, like hell yeah beyond Kite Man, Tom King Kite Man, hell yeah. It's just such a fantastic moment. And again, the Mitch Gerads art throughout is so visceral that I can't imagine any other artist doing the story. Mitch's style is so perfect for this. I'll be shocked if this doesn't win awards. And it has me so curious for what comes next with these other One Bad Day. Are they all going to end with Batman saying, all right, Mr. Freeze, you're done. I'm sticking you in the microwave,
And what about Joker?
Yeah, Two-Face, whoever. Did they announce a One Bad Day, Joe? I don't know that they did.
I don't know if they did. No, I don't know.
I know they did. They did Roz. I know there's a Mr. Freeze one coming. There's Two-Face. There's Penguin.
Yeah.
I don't know that there was a Joker, but anyway, yeah. I mean, this is just so good. I don't want to spoil everything. There are so many great character moments. I didn't touch at all on the fact that we see the formative years of Riddler. His real name's not Edward Nygma. We kind of understand his trauma and why he is the way that he is. But yeah, I mean, this was this was stunning. It was so good. Like I cannot wait to sit down and read it again and really take my time going through it again. I've only had time to read it once so far,
Yeah.
but yeah, more than a pick of the week. Like this is one of the best comics of the year for me,
Yeah,
no doubt.
this is the definitive Riddler story,
Oh yeah,
at least for me. Now, I should say that the way this ends, this has finality to it, so we can't see the Riddler anymore. If this is so, this is a Riddler story that can't necessarily ever be in continuity because it ends with finality. Uh, that was in fact the point of the story. This was definitely one bad day for many people, but it ended up certainly being one bad day for the Riddler himself. But the whole idea here of Edward Nigma, and Enigma, literally, I mean, this guy named himself, and as Riddler himself says at the end of this narrative, he goes, he basically said, riddles are fun, but I'm not. That was his final message to Batman. He basically turns, like you said, for all those years, in his formative years, he was a very intelligent kid, and he didn't like riddles when he was a kid, because riddles, he was very good at memorization, very good at rogue memory, very good at just knowing the answers. As you said, he was on par with Lex Luthor, on par, but he always kept his intelligence in check. And there's even a poignant scene here where at one point he even ends up meeting his mother, and he decides that he could ask his mother any question because he didn't know about his mother. He didn't know about his past. His mother was could answer the question about where he came from, more questions about his past. The one riddle that Edward Nigma, or that's not his real last name, but the one riddle that Edward himself could never answer were where he came from. But before his mother could answer his questions, he ended his mother's life. And that's really interesting because he almost like he didn't need the answers. He turned. This is his evolution. He stopped being he this was he was totally indifferent. This is the embodiment of evil in many ways, because you've heard that expression before that there's only one thing worse than evil, and that's indifference. This is a Riddler that is indifferent. He stops caring about anything, and he's extremely intelligent, and that makes him very powerful, and he'll get whatever the hell he wants, or he'll just, as he said to Batman, if you touch me, I will eventually I will kill the Robins, maybe I'll kill Stephanie, I'll kill Cassie, I'll do whatever I have to do. I will find a way to kill, and I'll kill anybody at random. This issue starts off with him killing a random citizen. The Joker kills a random citizen, and just for no reason whatsoever, just because he can, and to make a point to Batman to get his attention. And as you said, terrorize the threats he makes, how he does it. You feel the terror and the horror and the power of the Riddler, and yet he's not an intimidating person. Batman is this intimidating bat-like human creature-looking bat, and yet Riddler is the one you're terrified of as you're reading this story. This is Riddler with a brand new set of eyes. I mean, I'm seeing Riddler for very differently for the very first time. And kudos to Tom King. It's interesting that you mentioned that Mitch Gerard really was into this story and wanted to draw the Riddler. I almost got the impression that maybe I wonder if Mitch Gerard had any input into the story itself. He's not credited as being a writer on this, so all I can say is Tom King. Tom King, I know he might have a reputation for writing dark tales, but goddamn it, when they're this good, he can keep on writing these all he wants because I'll keep reading them.
yeah. I'm going to be curious too. The other thing that we mentioned, again, not overt, but he does appear to kill Riddler at the end. So is this going to be a situation where there's some backlash? Oh, Batman doesn't kill, blah blah blah. I mean, this clearly is a different continuity, different version. It doesn't say Black Label necessarily, but it's clearly out of continuity in a way, or standalone story that doesn't need to tie into anything else. So I'll be curious. I hope this is received with an open mind because there's the other aspect of it. Batman doesn't kill or whatever, and there's been various arguments about it, whether it's from the Zack Snyder movies or whatever. Especially the Superman, and I kind of buy into that. But Batman is not Superman, and Batman, if you go back and read a lot of his earliest comics from the Golden Age, he did kill people. He was an avenging Dark Knight. So, um, comics evolve over time, based on society and what's going on in culture. So
Mm.
while I would worry if we get to some point where Batman is Frank Castle and he's popping off jaywalkers, that's a little problematic, and in my mind not necessarily true to who the character's been for the majority of his publishing history. Um, but things out there in the real world are pretty dark as
Yeah.
well, and as we know, comics oftentimes mirror things that are going on in our culture and our society. So things tend to take a little bit of a darker turn, like they did in the '80s. You can kind of understand why. So yeah, this was again a really fantastic book. So um,
Was good.
other titles from DC that are coming out this week. I do know that there is a Scooby Doo issue, which typically we don't cover, but there is an issue of Scooby Doo. Where are you coming out this week? Give me a second, and I'll tell you the issue number. It's issue number 117. And then in terms of trade paperbacks, we have the Teen Titans Raven and Beast Boy, which is one YA graphic novel, and then the Beast Boy Loves Raven, which is kind of the sequel to that. There's a box set of hardcovers of those two books coming out. Those are by Cami Garcia. The aforementioned Wonder Woman Black and Gold, limited color palette stories, that's getting a hardcover. We also have volume 2 of Becky Cloonan and Michael W. Conrad's Wonder Woman run is in trade paperback. That's Through a Glass Darkly. We've got the Swamp Thing Volume 2 Conduit trade paperback, which collects the second part of Ram V's Swamp Thing storyline. Robin and Batman hardcover is also out. That is the book that is illustrated by Dustin Nguyen and written by Jeff Lemire that we covered earlier this year. It was a 3-issue. I think that one actually was labeled as Black Label, but if you're a fan of those two, you'll definitely want to. A fan of that series, you'll definitely want to pick that up. It was basically a Robin origin story told through the kind of the eyes and perspective of Dick Grayson. So those books are out from DC this week as well. Don't forget to tune in to the audio only comic source for New Comics Wednesday tomorrow. Those will be spoiler free, and then I should have some other content coming out. I know I've been promising you guys the return of Daily Spawn. I promise it's still coming. Just struggling to find time to get that done.
What
So
issue are you on with your Daily Spawn? What is it?
I don't honestly don't even remember anymore. I'm supposed to be up above 100. I think I'm around 60, somewhere in there. So I'll definitely pick up where I left off. And when I do get it going, it's going to be multiple issues, multiple episodes a day. So don't know if we'll still finish it this year, but I am committed to finishing it, even if it goes into to next year. So what about you? Anything to add?
No, it's just kudos to Tom King, man. He impressed me again. I got to once again. I'm planting my foot in my mouth when I think of how much I criticized that guy back during his Batman run. He's taken an about face. So, no, it's not. Again, I mean, DC is. I mean, there are good comics by DC. You and I were talking earlier that there's a little bit of continuity wonkiness with DC and what have you, but there are good comics to be had at DC if you just gotta give them an opportunity. So, but yeah.
Yeah, don't forget, everybody, if you're listening on the audio only, head over to YouTube, do a search for Rocky's channel, Comic Space Boom, exclamation point. Subscribe, like this video, leave comments. You guys know what to do. Ring that notification bell so you're sure to know when any new content comes out. Conversely, if you check us out on YouTube all the time and haven't subscribed to the Comic Source, just go to wherever you get your podcast, do a search for the Comic Source and subscribe so you don't miss out on any of our audio content. So, as always, we appreciate you joining us. Be sure you go and pick up Riddler, Batman Riddler, One Bad Day is very much worth your time. And that's going to do it for this episode. Appreciate you joining us always. We'll talk to you next time.
Catch you guys later.